Welcome to the DDReg Knowledge Capsule. Imagine spending $2 billion in like 10 years developing a life-saving drug.
Right, a massive investment.
Exactly. You successfully navigate the clinical trials, you get approvals from the FDA in the US, the EMA in Europe, and you're prepping to launch into this massive new international market.
Ta-da.
And then you have the entire submission completely rejected,
Yeah.
banned from entry, because of like a misplaced underscore in a PDF file name.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds totally absurd, but in the realm of global pharma regulation, that level of, granular, unforgiving scrutiny, that's just a daily reality.
It's wild. You just can't take a standardized corporate blueprint and copy-paste it onto a new map.
No, absolutely not. That assumption just does not apply here.
Right. So today, our mission on this deep dive is cracking the code of Southeast Asia's largest pharmaceutical market. We're talking about Indonesia. And the stakes for you, listening right now, are astronomical.
Huge. I mean, it's a population of over 270 million people.
Over 270 million. Plus, there's this rapidly expanding middle class, massive government investment in universal health coverage, and just an unprecedented demand for innovative healthcare.
Yeah, it is undeniably one of the most lucrative opportunities on the planet.
But, and this is a big but, standing squarely at the gate is Indonesia's National Agency of Drug and Food Control, BPOM.
Right, BPOM. And they enforce a regulatory landscape that operates with its own completely distinct procedural logic. It's got unique language requirements and, well, an incredibly strict interpretive framework.
And I think it's so easy to look at that strictness and just dismiss it, right? Like, oh, it's just bureaucratic red tape. But why does BPOM actually operate with this iron-fisted approach?
Well, it comes down to what they're tasked with protecting. BPOM isn't just creating paperwork to be difficult. I mean, they are guarding a massive, highly vulnerable population that's spread across thousands of islands.
Islands, multiple time zones, different climates.
Exactly. They have to ensure that a drug works just as safely in, say, a high-tech hospital in central Jakarta as it does in a totally remote rural clinic in Sumatra.
Wow, yeah. That's a huge logistical gap.
Right. So I always caution people against this really common assumption, thinking that an FDA or European approval is some sort of golden ticket.
Like a VIP pass.
Exactly. BPOM doesn't care about your VIP status in other countries. You have to prove yourself entirely on their terms.
Okay, so let's figure out how to actually do that, starting with the very first hurdle. Because before a company even compiles, a single page of clinical data, there's a fundamental legal firewall they have to breach.
The local anchor.
Yes. Who is actually allowed to own the drug's registration in Indonesia?
This is the foundation of everything. So, under Indonesia's government regulation number 5 of 2021, this is on risk-based business licensing. To legally sell a drug, you need a marketing authorization.
Which locally is known as the NIE, right?
Right, the NIE, or Nomor Izin Edar. And the absolute deal breaker here is that a foreign manufacturer cannot hold an NIE in their own name.
Wait, really?
Yeah, you cannot simply operate this out of a global headquarters in, like, Switzerland or New Jersey.
So the NIE must be held by an Indonesian legal entity. You need a local legal anchor. Basically, someone with boots on the ground in the country whose name is physically on the dotted line.
Correct. And not just any local entity either. It has to be an organization that holds a valid BPOM-issued pharmaceutical import license.
Ah, so you can't just use a shell company.
Definitely not. You have to establish a subsidiary or partner with a qualified local registration holder before you even think about initiating a submission.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here. If I'm a global pharma CEO, why can't I just hand this off to my local delivery distributor? I mean, they already have the refrigerated trucks, they own the warehouses, they know the local delivery route.
Sure, they have the logistics.
Right. So why wouldn't I just pay them to hold the NIE and call it a day?
Because that is precisely how multi-million-dollar supply chains collapse.
Oh.
Seriously. You cannot confuse logistical distribution reach with regulatory competence. The local registration holder isn't just acting as a mailbox to, forward BPOM's letters to your headquarters.
They're actually on the hook.
They bear the ultimate legal liability for that product in Indonesia.
Meaning they're legally responsible if something goes wrong.
Exactly. They're accountable for the product's ongoing quality and for a highly critical process called pharmacovigilance.
And for those unfamiliar, pharmacovigilance is basically the continuous, rigorous scientific monitoring of a drug's safety once it hits the public, right?
Right.
Tracking adverse reactions, side effects, long-term data.
You got it. So a logistics distributor might be fantastic at moving pallets from point A to point B. But if BPOM suddenly demands a highly technical periodic safety update report,
Right.
or say you need to file a complex variation application because you changed an ingredient supplier in Germany, that distributor is going to completely freeze.
Because they don't have the scientific personnel.
Exactly. They lack the scientific chops. And when they fail to comply, BPOM pulls your drug from the market.
Wow. So relying on a delivery guide to do a scientist's job will literally get you evicted from the market.
100%. You need a dedicated, highly competent regulatory affairs partner.
Okay, so once you have that local anchor secured to take on the liability, how do you actually package your science to meet Indonesian standards?
Well, you have to determine your registration pathway first. BPOM generally divides these into 3 lanes.
3 lanes, got it.
The first is for new drugs, so innovative medicines, new chemical entities, biologicals. This requires a massive, comprehensive dossier submitted in what's called the ACTD format.
The ACTD, that stands for the Asian Common Technical Dossier, right?
Yes. It's a standardized structure used across Southeast Asian nations to organize quality, non-clinical, and clinical data.
So there is at least an attempt at regional standardization. That's good. What about the other lanes?
The second pathway is for generic drugs. The critical requirement here is proving bioequivalence.
Meaning you have to scientifically demonstrate that your generic version acts in the human bloodstream identically to the original brand name drug.
Exactly. But here's the catch. BPOM doesn't just trust any lab data. Those bioequivalent studies must be conducted at facilities that BPOM itself has accredited.
Wait, so you can't just run the test at your preferred lab in, say, India or Europe and just send them the results?
No, absolutely not. Data integrity is so crucial to them that they demand home field oversight.
That is intense.
Okay.
And the third lane?
The third pathway is the reference country-based registration. This is an option if your drug is already approved in one of BPOM's designated, highly regulated reference countries.
So places like the U.S., EU member states, Japan, Australia, Canada, or the U.K.
Exactly.
Okay, hold on. If I have that reference country approval, doesn't that mean I get to skip to the front of the line? Like, I just show them my FDA approval and bypass the headache of proving the drug works all over again?
I have to offer a very strict reality check on that assumption.
Let's hear it.
The reference pathway is incredibly valuable, don't get me wrong, because it drastically reduces the clinical evidence burden.
Right, because you're relying on the reference country's clinical assessment.
Exactly. But it absolutely does not eliminate the local administrative labeling or manufacturing compliance requirements.
Ah, so you still have to play by BPOM's notoriously strict local rules for everything outside the clinical trial data.
You do. Which brings us to the administrative gauntlet of the ACTD dossier, specifically Part 1.
The Administrative and Product Information section. This seems to be where the most agonizing local demands live. I like to call this the translation trap.
The translation trap. That is the perfect way to frame it.
Because a foreign manufacturer might assume, right, that they can just take their FDA-approved package insert, hand it to a commercial translation agency to convert it into Bahasa Indonesia, and just hit submit.
Right, but doing that practically guarantees a rejection.
Wow, just an automatic rejection.
Absolutely. Because BPOM requires a highly specific, structurally unique document called the RKP.
The Ringkasan characteristic product.
Right. It is not a direct translation of an FDA label. It is a completely distinct document drafted using BPOM's exact prescribed content structure and, crucially, their approved pharmaceutical lexicon.
Let's explain why they are so militant about this.
Yeah.
I mean, Indonesia is a massive archipelago with hundreds of distinct local dialects.
Yes.
So if a translation agency translates an English medical instruction like take on an empty stomach using a colloquial phrase, a doctor in a remote province might interpret it totally differently than a doctor in the capital.
Exactly, and that ambiguity could literally lead to a fatal medical error.
So BPOM forces everyone to use one standardized, rigid medical vocabulary.
Exactly. It's entirely about eliminating interpretive risk. If you don't use their exact terminology on your primary packaging, your secondary packaging, and your patient inserts, you fail the review.
And that's just the language piece. The administrative demands cascade into international legal documentation, too. Like you must provide CPPs, right?
Yes, certificates of pharmaceutical product, issued by your national health authority. but BPOM demands that these be apostilled.
And for those not living and breathing international regulatory law, an apostille is essentially an internationally recognized notarization. It's this highly specialized legal seal proving the document isn't a forgery.
Right. And obtaining that seal takes real time. BPOM has rejected entire submissions just because of formatting quirks on an apostille.
Seriously, just formatting.
Yeah, or because the certificate didn't explicitly detail the exact scope of the manufacturing site. And speaking of manufacturing, BPOM requires valid good manufacturing practice GMP certificates for every single facility involved in the drug's creation.
Okay, let's visualize that supply chain for a second. Imagine a company synthesizes the active chemical ingredient in a lab in India, ships it to Italy to be manufactured into a pill, and then ships those pills to the UK to be placed into blister packs.
In that scenario, BPOM requires a recognized, valid GMP certificate for the site in India, the site in Italy, and the site in the UK.
Every single node.
Every single node in the global supply chain must be documented and proven compliant to their standards. If even one secondary packaging site lacks the proper paperwork, the entire registration halts.
So you managed to get your paperwork apostilled, you translated it into the perfect RKP terminology, and you've mapped out the GMP certificates for your entire supply chain.
You're doing great so far.
Right, but surviving that administrative gauntlet doesn't mean your actual physical product will survive the Indonesian environment.
Exactly.
Which brings us to part 2 of the dossier. And this is arguably the most fascinating geographic reality check in the entire process. I'm talking about the climate catch.
Ah, yes. The Zone IVb stability requirement. This is where global pharmaceutical science aggressively collides with the reality of tropical geography.
It's geographical reality checking clinical science. It's essentially like trying to sell a winter coat in the desert, right? If a massive global pharma company develops a new drug in, say, Northern Europe or the Northern US, they physically tested that pill's stability, how long it lasts on a shelf, based on their own local weather.
Correct. The pharmaceutical world is divided into climatic zones to standardize this testing. So markets in the European Union and North America generally fall under Zone IVb or Zone 3 conditions.
Okay. And in practical terms, what does that mean?
That means the manufacturer tested the drug's shelf life in environmental chambers set to around 30 degrees Celsius and 65% relative humidity.
But Indonesia sits right on the equator. I mean, it is a tropical archipelago.
Right, which places it firmly in climatic Zone IVb. So BPOM mandates that you provide physical stability data generated under Zone IV conditions.
Which are what?
That means proving your drug remains safe and effective after sitting in an environment of 40 degrees Celsius and 75% relative humidity for months.
Just think about the physical mechanics of that. Intense, relentless heat and suffocating moisture. At 40 degrees Celsius and high humidity, chemical compounds degrade much faster.
They absolutely do.
The active pharmaceutical ingredient could break down and become toxic. Or, I don't know, the binders holding a tablet together could literally melt and crumble.
That is the exact hazard BPOM is guarding against. If a manufacturer simply submits their European Zone IVb stability data, BPOM outright rejects it.
Because it doesn't prove anything for their climate.
Exactly. That data does not prove the drug will survive sitting in a non-air-conditioned warehouse in Jakarta or in a patient's humid bathroom cabinet in Bali.
So what do foreign manufacturers have to do?
They are forced to conduct specific Zone IVb bridging studies. And I have to say, this is one of the most chronically underestimated technical requirements in the entire process.
I can imagine. You can't fake time.
Right. You cannot speed up time. Generating 6 months or 12 months of new physical stability data takes exactly 6 or 12 months.
Wow.
If you don't factor that into your global launch strategy, your timeline is instantly destroyed.
Okay, so let's say a company actually did the homework. They have the competent local partner, they conquered the translation trap, they possess the apostilled certificates for every manufacturing node, and they spent the time generating that punishing Zone IV climate data.
They've done everything right.
They compiled the dossier, they hit submit. You'd think the hard part is over, but the waiting game they enter is incredibly deceptive.
Very. The submission process happens entirely through BPOM's eReg portal. And the required level of fastidiousness here is ruthless.
Ruthless how?
Well, you upload your dossier as a series of PDF documents. BPOM enforces exact character-specific file naming conventions.
We mentioned this earlier, character-specific.
Yes. If you upload a file with a misplaced underscore or a title that deviates slightly from their manual, the system flags it. Your submission can be rejected during the initial 10-day administrative screening period.
Just let that sink in. A multi-billion-dollar drug backed by thousands of pages of groundbreaking clinical science rejected before a human scientist even glances at it, all because of a typo in a file name.
It is a purely binary system at that stage. You either comply perfectly or you are out.
Unreal. But okay, let's assume you survive the administrative screening and enter the substantive scientific review.
Right, and BPOM is transparent here. They publish target timelines for these reviews. For new drugs, the published target is 300 working days. For generics, it's 100 working days. And for reference country submissions, it's 150 working days.
Wait, let's do the math on that. 300 working days is just over a calendar year. That is a completely manageable time frame. You can build a one-year regulatory review into a corporate launch calendar.
You'd think so.
So why are global companies constantly complaining that Indonesian registrations actually take 24 to 36 months? Where are those missing years coming from?
Those missing years come from a bureaucratic mechanism known as the stop clock.
The stop clock.
Yes. Officially, this is triggered by the Surat Permintaan Tambahan data. That translates to the formal request for additional data.
Okay, so how exactly does the stop clock work?
So whenever BPOM's scientific evaluators are reviewing your dossier and they find a gap, maybe an inconsistency in your RKP terminology or a missing GMP certificate from that secondary packaging site in the UK we mentioned earlier.
Or a flaw in your Zone IVb climate data.
Exactly. If they find any of that, they issue a formal request. And the very second that request is issued, your 300-day countdown clock pauses. It completely freezes.
And the manufacturer is suddenly on the defensive.
Yes. You are given a strict 60 working day window to respond and rectify the issue.
Which sounds like enough time, but...
But think about the complexity of the issues BPOM raises. If they demand a new physical stability test or require you to source a newly apostilled legal document from a European health ministry, you often cannot achieve that within 60 days.
Oh, man. So manufacturers have to beg for extensions.
They do. And BPOM doesn't just issue one of these requests, they can issue multiple rounds of them.
So let me get this straight. Every time they find a discrepancy, the clock stops. You spend 3 months fixing it, the clock starts again. They find another issue, the clock stops again.
You're seeing the pattern.
That cascading delay is how a highly predictable 300-day target mutates into a grueling, unpredictable 3-year nightmare.
Precisely. The stop clock is the ultimate test of how well you prepared your dossier before hitting submit. If your local partner isn't meticulously managing that process, the delays become infinite.
Okay, let's look at the best-case scenario. A company endures the stop clocks, they satisfy every single scientific inquiry, and BPOM finally grants the local partner that golden time, the NIE marketing authorization.
The holy grail.
The drug is legally approved for sale in Indonesia. But the regulatory burden doesn't evaporate the moment the product hits the pharmacy shelves, does it?
Not at all. The post-market reality in Indonesia is just as rigorous as the pre-market submission. BPOM maintains intense surveillance over approved products.
Like the pharmacovigilance we talked about earlier.
Exactly. If a serious adverse drug reaction occurs once the drug is out in the public, your local registration holder must report it to BPOM within 15 calendar days.
Wait, calendar days, not working days.
Calendar days. That requires an always-on, highly responsive safety monitoring system.
Okay, and what if the company wants to tweak the product later? Say they redesign the cardboard box it comes in, or they add a new manufacturing facility in a different country just to keep up with demand.
You cannot simply implement those changes. Even for minor administrative tweaks to the labeling or adding a new manufacturing site, you must submit a formal variation application to BPOM.
So more waiting.
A lot more. You have to wait for them to officially approve the variation before you can physically ship the newly packaged or newly manufactured drug into the country.
Wow.
Furthermore, for many new drugs, BPOM attaches Phase 4 post-market safety study commitments to the NIE. So you are legally bound to conduct ongoing clinical observations in the Indonesian population and submit those reports on strict deadlines.
So synthesizing all of these layers for you listening, succeeding in Indonesia's massive pharmaceutical market requires nothing short of radical localization.
That's the perfect term for it.
You absolutely cannot recycle your global data, translate it on the cheap, and expect it to fly. You need a highly competent, scientifically fluent local partner who absorbs your legal liability. You need culturally and structurally perfect labeling.
Yep, unbroken chain of international manufacturing documentation.
Exactly. And you need the physical Zone IVb science to prove your drug can survive the reality of the equatorial climate.
Investing deeply in that localized depth up front is literally the only way to prevent the stop clock from destroying your launch timeline.
Right.
But even after you achieve all of that, there is one final detail regarding the NIE that dictates long-term strategy. The marketing authorization you fought years to obtain. It is only valid for 5 years.
Only 5 years, so it's not a permanent deed to a house, it's a 5-year lease.
Exactly. And renewal is absolutely not automatic. You have to proactively compile and submit renewal paperwork well before that 5-year term expires.
And if you miss it,
If you miss that deadline and the NIE lapses, BPOM effectively evicts you from the market. You cannot simply pay a late fee and reactivate it. Oh my God.
you have to start the entire multi-year grueling registration process completely from scratch.
Wow. Just let the gravity of that sink in for a moment. Think about the scale of global business. How many multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical supply chains, how many massive corporate expansions into Southeast Asia are currently hanging by a thread?
Too many.
All of that infrastructure, all of that projected revenue is entirely dependent on one local partner sitting in an office in Jakarta, remembering to hit submit on a single administrative calendar deadline before the clock strikes zero.
It is the ultimate proof that in the global health sector, local context isn't just a detail, it is the only thing that matters.
It really is. I mean, a missing PDF underscore or a forgotten calendar date can undo decades of brilliant science. Thanks for joining us in the Knowledge Capsule. Until next time, keep digging deeper.